Welcome to the webinar, and we'll get started now. First of all, I want to talk to you a little bit about Achievement Services. We are a consulting division of STI, and we go into schools and help them with their improvement efforts as well as transitioning into Common Core. We've been in several states now for quite some time working with Common Core and helping the teachers make those transitions, and hopefully part of what we talk to you today will help you see some of the offerings that we have and how we might be able to benefit you. First of all, in talking about leadership and what's needed, we know that from the very beginning, the head, it is our administrators and our leaders that have to drive new initiatives in schools, and we know that even though the catalysts come through various means, without the leadership at the head leading that, efforts are not always effective, and it takes the leadership within those schools to make it happen. And so we want to partner with our leaders. We know they're very busy. We know that they have a lot of time constraints, and we want to do whatever we can to provide support and to provide assistance for them. And that's why we have started this Leadership Academy for administrators, and we want to go through it, let you all know what it's about, and how that we might be able to best help you transition to Common Core. It is designed for the administrators and leadership teams. It's designed to help them meet the needs and the requirements under new mandates, new laws that come out, as well as just improving their schools and transitioning into Common Core. First of all, we have some objectives we want to cover in our Leadership Academy. The first objective is to provide our leaders with an overview and of Common Core, as well as the implications of what it will take to transition for all the stakeholders, including teachers, students, and parents as well. We also have an objective to help leaders uncover the gap analysis and to see what next steps are needed as they transition into Common Core. We also want to help them develop a short and long-term timeline for how they need to develop methods for transitioning into Common Core, create a local vision for embracing college and career readiness, extrapolate what is necessary to build literacy, and to build mathematical minds. So all of these objectives are covered within our leadership model, and we're going to talk about it today. First of all, let's talk about Objective 1, the overview for Common Core. We have heard a lot about Common Core in the past couple of years, especially since 2010. And as we move forward, we're looking at what those implications are. STI has partnered with Judy Vallis and myself to create a workbook to help our administrators in our schools transition and to really understand the overview of where Common Core comes from, the three pillars of the research for Common Core, which include the NAEP, the PISA, as well as college and career readiness models, especially looking at ACT scores and other types of college readiness, including the fact that we have so many remediation classes in this country for our students who are going to college. So as we look at all those things, Judy Vallis and I have worked with schools in several states, and we have designed a workbook to try to help our partners transition through Common Core, and some of those sections of the workbook include what Common Core really is, and will it bring common ground to our schools, as well as the ELA, the science, the social science, and the technical literacy, mathematical minds, and then helping with pacing and assessments and lesson plans. So we do have a workbook that's included within our FLA model that all of our attendees would receive. We want to talk a moment about the transition to Common Core, where we've been, where we're headed, and why we're going in this direction. And if you look at the chart that we have on the webinar, you can see that before the standards-based education movement, teaching in the past basically revolved around whatever time you had available. That was the time it took to teach. The curriculum was defined basically by a textbook. We measured our success in Carnegie units for our high school students. The expectations set for our students largely came from textbooks or Carnegie units, as well as historical influences. And in the past, basically assessments included normative-based assessments. We had infrequent comparisons of students. There was a minimum competency in the 1970s. We didn't have a systemic program in place to help the schools improve or to transition into reform. And then we kind of transitioned under the standards movement, which kind of happened about the same time No Child Left Behind came into place. Of course, the famous program or the famous research that came out that let us know our schools were in trouble. But at that time, it was varied by state to state of what we had to offer. There was no explicit criteria. One of the things that our teachers would tell us, they did not have enough time to adequately address all the standards that they had to teach. So there was a problem in having time, and we've seen that even as right now we're still seeing those problems with not enough time to address all the standards that we have. In addition to that, the standards did start driving the curriculum, but the curriculum development happened after the standards development, so there wasn't a clear alignment in many cases. Our state standards were, of course, built by each state, and so they were supposedly criterion reference or criterion based, but every state had its own ability to determine what those standards would be, as it is still today. It varied state by state for the expectations for students. And over time, we moved from traditional to hopefully college and career criteria. Basically, for assessment, No Child Left Behind became the accountability measure, and we moved from a normative testing into a more criterion reference-based testing model. State by state, though, we still were able to do as we wanted to, as the states decided. And the reform varied state by state. Some were tightly aligned, others were not. But under Common Core, after seeing the movement from before standards-based through standards-based, under the Common Core model, the governors and the chief academic or the chief officers of school boards had decided that we needed something that would be more cohesive, and in terms of standards, the standards were designed to require that 85% of instructional time was available. Now the standards are followed by curriculum development almost immediately. The Common Core standards have become the measurement of student outcomes for those states participating in PARCC or SMARTer. The expectations of the students include a college and career readiness, along with international benchmarks such as PISA and state benchmarks such as the NAEP, the national test for 4th and 8th grade math and reading. The accountability here is to inform and improve teaching under the new model, and there is a systemic nature of reform where all states are coming together in the consortia to look and see what is actually needed in order to make our schools better. So we have definitely moved from the before standards-based to a new model of more cohesiveness and hopefully preparing our students for college and career readiness. So as we look at, as administrators, where we've been and where we need to go, there are many things we need to assess in our own local schools. And in order to do that, we need to complete a comprehensive gap analysis to see what the next steps are needed for specific principals and specific schools. And in this, we have a needs assessment, a vision, and a planning template along with a timeline for our teachers. The first one is the Common Core Needs Assessment. Now, much of this assessment is adapted from the achieve.org document that was released for the implementation of Common Core, but we have also added our own components that we felt were necessary for teachers. Beginning with the vision, what is our true vision in our individual schools? Where are we at right now? Is everyone on board with the vision? Do we all understand what we need to do? I visited many schools over the past few weeks, and I will tell you that the vision varies. And in some cases, there isn't a clear vision at all, and teachers are becoming frustrated, administrators are becoming frustrated as Common Core continues to unravel and unroll out. Getting that clear vision together, not knowing what the states are going to do, not understanding fully what the federal government is going to require. We do see that at this time the vision is becoming difficult to define in some situations. And the sooner that individual schools can develop their vision, I think the better they're going to be. That leadership model, determining what's happening in our schools, where the leadership exists, do we have the teams in place? Are we still all wondering what's going on? Having that leadership model ready is going to be critical for a smooth rollout of Common Core. And then, of course, the timeline. And one thing that I hear from teachers almost every time I speak with them is the time factor, knowing what the timeline is going to be and having the ability to make sure that they all have time to do what they need to do. It seems to be on everyone's minds. They really want to know. And then the last one on this page, the budget, almost becomes a laughing point in a lot of my workshops because there is no clear budget for Common Core for many of my teachers. They don't know how this is really going to take place. And so as the leadership in the schools and the districts looks at what is going to be required to roll out Common Core, kind of putting their teachers' minds at ease about the budget will be critical in the coming months. The gap analysis of understanding where a particular school has performed with the former standards, in addition to where they need to go and how Common Core is changing from where their standards are, is critical. And then having that communication set up for teachers, knowing and administrators as well, knowing what's going to be required for communication is important in this needs assessment as well. Finally, looking at instructional strategies and materials for success. Many of our teachers are looking through that at this time. I know I've been in several schools where textbooks are currently being considered, and I have teachers ask me, as well as some district curriculum folks ask me for advice now, and really and truly, I'm not the expert to tell you what to purchase or what not to purchase. I just give a word of caution. Make sure that your teachers have time to look through their materials carefully. I was with a group this past week, and as they began to unroll and look at the textbooks, they realized the way their states, especially in high school, had pulled in standards to make their high school courses was somewhat different from the original model from Common Core. And as they looked at their textbooks, they realized there was large pieces left out of the new textbooks coming out based on the way their state had put those standards together. So it's going to be very critical for the teachers to really have time to, first of all, understand what the states are requiring for Common Core rollout, and second of all, for them to have time to really look through those materials before they are forced to make a judgment call and then have something that they will have to carry for several years that really won't completely meet their needs. And so that's my cautionary word for advice on textbooks. Professional development is critical for my teachers. I hear from them all the time about how that they would love to do a better job and they would really love to know how to teach the standards the way they're supposed to be, but many times they're limited as to the professional development they can attend in terms of workshops, and they just don't have enough time to do the vertical teaming that they need to do. And so having time to truly develop a professional development plan in the schools is very important as well. Assessment and data becomes critical, and however, my caution here is just having data for the sake of having numbers will not improve your schools very much at all. You have to have something in place to make sure the data is being used, and many schools have moved into a data-rich model, but I don't know how many of those schools have actually turned the data into meaningful information to change the course of their students' lives. We don't want the numbers just to tell us how bad we are or how good we are. We want the numbers to help us improve. The culture, developing a culture in our schools where teachers embrace change and students embrace change as well. College and career readiness demands a more rigorous model, and that is painful. That is not easy. If it were easy, we probably wouldn't all be at this point as a nation looking for what we can do to improve our schools. So it's going to be a painful process. It will require change, and building that culture of where pain is sometimes good is kind of hard to do. I know it is for me. When I think about pain, I certainly don't like it, but I know that sometimes it's necessary and it's needful. So having that culture of where we are not afraid to do what is even uncomfortable, we are more than willing to take the next step. In meeting with teachers over the past couple of weeks, pacing, I keep hearing them say, I don't think my kids can do this. I don't think we're ready for this. I'm not ready for this as a teacher. And so hearing their struggle, knowing that the administration and the leadership in those roles will have to come in and either put their minds at ease or accept them not moving forward. And that's the part that really worries me, is I don't want Common Core to become another failed mission that we have in American public education. Scope and sequence and pacing of the standards is important, but I've been working with some districts recently, scoping through and pacing the Common Core standards, specifically for mathematics, knowing how to do that, and having the teachers have those rich discussions of where those weaknesses are and where they know for the next 4 to 5 years they will not have children coming to them that have been in a rich, rigorous Common Core environment. How they're going to make those adaptations in their own classrooms will be critical as we move forward. Technology is a point of interest for many of us. I know that if you've read through the Common Core standards, you realize there is a great emphasis on technology, not only in literacy but also in mathematics. Having the ability to even complete some of the standards in mathematics will require more technology than many of our schools have. I've had teachers even make that point as early as yesterday to me, that they know they do not have the technology currently existing in their classrooms to even fully roll out the Common Core standards in mathematics with many of the suggested technology needs that are there for the rollout of math. So when we're working with the teachers, in addition to the needs assessment, there is a planning template that we also share with teachers and administrators on how they're going to take several of these pieces that are needed for an effective rollout and what strategies they're going to use, what resources do they need, how will they implement it, and what will be the timeline. And some of these criteria include pre-assessments, post-assessments, formatives, curriculum development, lesson and instructional plans, correlational studies between what was being taught and what's new, reviewing data as it's made available to us, that vertical planning, interdisciplinary planning, and communication. All of these are important pieces for teachers to use in their planning template, and they need to have rich discussions driven by administrators in their schools on how they're going to actually roll this out and be successful. The second thing we want to talk about underneath the gap analysis is the timeline. Time is critical. We all know that we don't have enough time as it is, and now we're going to try to implement something that is even more rigorous. There will have to be some changes made, and I recognize that if you already have a full schedule, to add something on, you're going to have to take something off or you're going to run out of time, and then it's not going to be done well. So looking at that timeline and how we're going to actually roll things out so that teachers aren't overwhelmed, I certainly don't advise anyone to try to do a full rollout of Common Core. I think we have time to roll it out in a sequence that is doable for everyone. And as administrators look at their timeline and what they see as most critical for their schools, no one should be better equipped to do that than the administrators of the schools to understand where their gaps already exist and how they feel they can best roll out Common Core so that their teachers and their students will be able to transition with the least amount of resistance. A vision for the entire school must be led by the school administrators in order for it to be an effective vision. And so I encourage all of our administrators to take time to sit down and think through your vision for your schools, where you want them to be in 5 years, how you plan for this to roll out. And some of the parts of the vision that were recommended by the Achieve organization, as well as some that we've added, include the student performance, where we feel students should be, where they are, we think they are now in terms of college and career readiness, where we need to go and how we're going to get there, What are our curriculum needs right now? Have they met the needs of our current standards? Do we feel that these curriculum materials are going to be sufficient for moving forward with a college and career readiness rigorous model? How have our assessments helped us in the past? Did we have a plan for some assessments that could be used to drive instruction and not just give grades? What is the assessment plan for the school? How are we using that data? Do we have a war room? Are we using it to truly help our children, or are we simply still giving grades so that our parents have some indication of what their children are doing in school? Professional development, where are we right now with providing that for our teachers? Where do we want to be for 2014-15 with Common Core? And how are our students truly going to transition into a college and career model? These are all issues that need to be thought of as we develop a vision for our school. And so we want our administrators to have help with that. One of the methods for helping administrators is providing them with observation forms that they can use for college and career readiness. One of my directors, Mr. Larry Flackney, has worked on an observation form for this, and we have guidance for that for our administrators during the FLA. We want to help them. We want to put aside any fear they may have on what they should and should not be looking for in order to have a fully developed and effective observation model in their schools. So we have, during the FLA model, we have that guidance to provide our administrators so that they will know what their look for should be. Another interesting piece that I have found through my research comes from the Dana Center out of Austin, there at the University of Texas. And this is a great model for schools to use to show vertical teaming and alignment. If you notice on this particular chart, we begin with grade 3 and transition through grade 5 and see how the standard grows on representing and interpreting data. We look at the changes that are made between grade levels. We look at what the levels of instruction have to be in order for it to happen. And finally, what are those implications for instruction and assessment? And as we work with our administrators to show them how they need to set up vertical teams in their schools, we want them to have a clear picture of how the standards evolve and what needs to take place grade level to grade level in order to ensure that all of the holes are covered up. There's no gray areas. Our students are leaving each grade level with true mastery for what is required to be successful at the next grade level. That is something we have not conquered in this country. We have sent students up grade level to grade level year after year with holes. Even though our state assessments may have shown proficiency at the state level of requirements with the baselines, we know our children do not always come to us at the next grade level with all the skills mastered that they need. And as I said, and I work with middle school and high school teachers year to year, specifically with pacing and talking with them, that is always an issue with them. They really know, they know that the elementary teachers and the grade levels below them are teaching the students, but yet they find themselves covered in subordinate skills for so much of their first semester that they really cannot get to the content that they need to get to be a true college and career readiness high school. And this has to stop, and I think the best way for it to stop is to have true vertical teaming where teachers talk to each other from feeder patterns, where they talk to each other and they understand what level of mastery needs to be required at each grade level. And so this is also part of our FLA for our administrators to help them see where that needs to go. The last couple of parts about the FLA leadership model that is getting specifically into the content areas of literacy and mathematics. And we want to help our administrators understand what it truly takes to have a strong literacy program. We know that there are major shifts that have occurred with Common Core, and the first one is the increased emphasis on informational text. And so as we're working with our leaders, we want them to understand the types of reading materials that they should be seeing in their classrooms on a day-to-day basis. We want them to see the changes that are taking place so that they will know how best to help their teachers with resources and how to buy the kinds of information and how to spread the burden among several teachers, not just one specific teacher with literacy. Another major shift has become as I just mentioned, that accountability that should be in all areas of school, not just in the English Language Arts department. There is now an accountability measure in place for the social studies, the sciences, and the technical classes to help with that increased emphasis on informational text. If you look at where we've been in the past, supposedly in the ELA classroom under the current model, most of the time the teacher should be spending on informational text with a little bit of literary. However, if we really want to talk about what's truly been happening in the classroom, we know that our ELA teachers love to spend time with the literary and less time focusing on informational text, and they will tell you they're more comfortable with the literary, and they truly want their students to have a great grasp on the classics, the literary classics, and so they do spend a lot of time in novels and working through short stories. But in the future, if we took the model that's been given to us by Common Core and we really did spread the informational text over the technology classes, the science classes, as well as the social studies classes, then our ELA teachers could balance their time more effectively and provide our students not only with the informational pieces that they need, but also with an increased amount of literary if all of the other teachers in place will take ownership of those informational pieces that our students need. Our third shift is in the complexity of text. Now, there are three measures of text complexity that's written in the Common Core. First of all, it's the type of words being used in the vocabulary. Then it talks about the length and the complexity of the passages in terms of length and the structure of the sentences. And then the third thing it talks about is the level of motivation for the student to read it, how interested the student is in the piece. And so as we've seen those text complexities increase, the Lexile scores have increased, and we know that our students need to be reading more complex material than what we've allowed them to read in the past or helped them read in the past. The fourth shift in literacy comes in terms of argument. And as we're looking at argument here, we can see that our teachers need to spend a lot more time in the middle and the high school helping our students understand how to truly persuade. And by the time our 12th grade students are there getting ready for college, much of their time should be spent not on conveying experiences or even explaining, but much of their time should be spent in persuasion of their ideas, providing evidence, supporting it through references, truly citing sources. So we have to spend more time in literacy moving our students forward. One of the things that Common Core brings out is that idea of a single rich task where several standards are all inclusive within one single task, where the student will be writing or answering questions, moving forward with a project, a lot of project-based learning, a lot of performance tasks. And so this is not a new concept. This has been out for a long time in terms of using terms like project-based learning, problem-based learning, and so we see that's coming back, and we see that our professionals and our educators, researchers have decided, there's a lot of value in this, and just simply having kids answer a multiple-choice question is not enough. And so they're bringing back this concept that's been out for quite some time of having our students truly take the information we provide them as instructors and actually construct their own learning with it, actually use the information in meaningful tasks. And so you will see a lot of more research coming out, and I know that the constructivists in this country are probably doing the hallelujah dance that this is happening, but you will see, and I've heard a lot of teachers tell me, and they've shared with me, this is great, this is what we wanted to do. We're so tired of raising bubble kids. This is going to be something new. But the problem is they haven't had the training to do this in a long time, and so now they feel frustrated with the idea of them having to choose these kinds of tasks. And so they need that training, and they need help with developing rich tasks. So we've worked on some samples ourselves with taking standards and pulling them all together, providing some sample research and writing assessments, providing our teachers with some clear examples, as well as researching others that have released them in the last few months. And we can see that our teachers are really getting excited about being able to do something besides bubble tests. They are so tired of multiple choice tests. And I see that if there's one great thing about Common Core that's going to be very positive, it is this idea that our teachers can be more creative in the classroom. Another thing we've developed to help our teachers, we've seen many states have moved into statements similar to this, and there are many out there, but we decided that the teachers have to, first of all, understand the standards, but in addition to that, it is very critical for our students to understand these standards as well. So we've developed I CAN statements for ELA and for math to help our teachers help kids do self-reporting and help the kids understand truly where their education is going. And if you've had the opportunity to read any of John Hattie's book, Visible Learning, you will notice that self-reporting is one of the strongest, most effective strategies that anyone can have going for them in a classroom. Looking at mathematics, understanding where we need to go, we have to look at the K-8 domains and see what's required prior to entering into high school, because at the high school level, it's very content-driven, specifically getting kids prepared for college. And so all of the subordinate skills that are required for Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calculus, Trigonometry, all of those things need to be mastered prior to students entering into their high school years. Therefore, what I have found in the Common Core mathematics, and I think some of my colleagues would agree with me, such as Dr. Wesley Bird, who consults with us, a lot of the standards in K-8 have become much more rigorous. And that's a concern for me, and I think it should be a concern for administrators. If your K-5 teachers are not truly content-driven mathematics teachers, they are going to have additional help, professional learning. They're going to have time to absorb what's happening, because if not, they truly won't know what to do to make sure the students have mastered the skills. One example is the area of fractions. Fractions kill our students every year. And my high school teachers, as well as my middle school teachers, tell me they spend an enormous amount of time reteaching fractions. And according to Common Core, fractions should be mastered by the end of 5th grade. And so when we talk about fractions, we're talking about adding, multiplying, dividing with like and unlike denominators. That critical point right there is truly going to cause concern for many 5th grade teachers, as well as the 4th and 3rd grade teachers, who have to absorb a lot of those standards and make sure that they're ready for mastery. One of the things that we're working on right now in a project for our teachers and our administrators is a set of notes for math and ELA, and going through and helping those teachers who may not have enough time to go get a whole course in math. At least we can provide notes to help them understand what the standards are telling them, talk about it in terms of the domains and clusters, what's truly required, what the verbs are in the standards, so that the teachers will know what they have to measure for student mastery. And so we've designed a series of notes and are still working on those to help the teachers through that process for those who participate in our programs. I've already mentioned the I CAN statements earlier in ELA, and here's another example in our math as well. One of the areas that we work in is helping our teachers design formative assessments. And we are currently working with teachers, even though we don't have a lot of clear models from PARC or SMARTER at this point, nor do we have clear models from states who may design their own test. But we are currently working with teachers to understand verbs and how those verbs can be measured in terms of assessments. So here's an example of a 2nd grade test that a couple of teachers pulled together in a workshop in Missouri, and truly trying to understand what they needed to do and how to get it to the highest rigor level. And if you had the time to read through the assessment, you would see that it began, and I'll just go back for a moment, it began with multiple choice, but as it transitioned to the end of the quiz, It headed all the way to the highest level of the child constructing using the information they had learned in arrays. And this is a second grade assessment. We've also been watching and looking to see what's being released by Park and Smarter. And here is an example of a math question released by Smarter. And so as I'm working with my math teachers, I want them to understand traditional multiple choice testing is a thing of the past, and we need to start pushing our children to think beyond there's only one correct answer, and getting them to truly understand they have to look and deeper and to analyze every one of their distractors to see if it can be a correct answer or not. And these are just some samples that were released in the third showcase of the Smarter documents. Smarter has released 3 showcases with a few items for mathematics at this point. You can Google them or find them on their website, and it's just math sample, and you can call it Showcase 1 through 3, and there are examples there for you. We've worked with our teachers on pacing for mathematics and ELA. One of for mathematics, we've used some sample, scope, and sequence documents from the Dana Center, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation. The Dana Center has worked through scope and pacing for Common Core using themes, and I've used this in 2 different districts in one of my states, and I had my teachers tell me, do you agree with the units they've chosen? Does this make sense? And they really methodically went through and thought about using their current course of study as well as the Common Core, and they did make some modifications, but for the most part, teachers responded well to the examples that are out there, so they don't have to do everything from ground zero. They do have some samples out there, and we have used some from the Dana Center to help them. Also helping them understand the mathematical practices involved. And for this particular state, which happens to be the state of Alabama, notice in the pacing document we have indicated everything that's new. We help our teachers through that process, and we want administrators to be aware of what teachers need to do in our own leadership engagement. So the FLA includes a 2-day seminar to help our administrators get started with understanding these objectives that I've listed to you today, all 5 objectives involving the overview, involving the gaps and needs assessment, the timeline, involving the vision, as well as looking at literacy and mathematics through that 2-day seminar that includes our workbook and other materials that we've prepared for our administrators. And then we have 3 days of additional consults through the year that are set up so that administrators can come together and continue to talk with us about how they're implementing Common Core in their districts. Just want to briefly mention the other catalysts that we have for our teachers. We currently have 3 catalysts in addition to our leadership model. These catalysts are for our teachers. They're packages they can be comprehensive or they can be standalone packages. Of course, we always would recommend a comprehensive approach, but we do have Catalyst 1, which basically helps our teachers unwrap the standards. We have Catalyst 2, where we work with them more specifically for designing instruction as well as assessment pieces. We have Catalyst 3, where we work side by side with teachers. We do a lot of hand-to-hand, side-by-side modeling, teaching. We also have a tutorial model where we help train teachers to be great tutors. We have a couple of additional models in that one. I'll look at it very quickly. The first one is content enhancement through lesson planning and observation. Our second quadrant is where we actually do the side-by-side teaching, classroom observations, and then a third quadrant is model teaching. Fourth is test creation. And so we have several quadrants there where we work with them, and this is a more comprehensive engagement with specific teachers in our Catalyst 3 as some of our districts get to that model. My name is Sarah Odom, and I am the Chief Academic Officer. You can see my phone number here where you can contact me.